it for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Thursday, June 18. I am recording this a little bit earlier in the day because, of course, while you're watching this at 10 p.m., it's the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers and what could be the final game of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, if the Florida Panthers win, they end up winning the Stanley Cup. But I have been here earlier today at the Montreal Manufacturing Technology Show. And so I'm still here. And I had a CF Montreal podcast, live one, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. And I stuck around to record the Habs podcast. And what is the Montreal Manufacturing Technology Show? It's exactly what it sounds like. Don't miss your chance to immerse yourself in the manufacturing experience of what they call MMTS, Montreal Manufacturing Technology Show. Le Salon de la Technologie de Fabrication de Montréal, STFM en français. And it got underway today. And just to paint a picture for you, there are hundreds of tables set up. There are hundreds and thousands of people here. And all the latest in the technological world is here. And so many products and everyone talking about what they do. And it's pretty cool. One of those you have to be here moments, and you might want to check this out. And once again, it started today. It goes all the way to June 20th. We're at Palais des Congrès. And if you'd like to register for free, all you have to do is just use the code PODCAST to register for free. The Montreal Manufacturing Technology Show. All right, okay. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, once again recognized as one of Canada's top fleet employers for the fourth consecutive year. It's a prestigious accolade, underscores their steadfast dedication to fostering a workplace of excellence and opportunity, much in part to their exceptional team for their unwavering commitment and contribution. Energy Transportation Group is a top fleet employer. Also, brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards, Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. Where's Liz Farnese going? Is she leaving? Liz Farnese. All right. Okay. She's done for the day. Thank you, Liz, because we're here courtesy of Liz. Thanks to Liz. She set it all up. And so thank you, Liz, for that. Playground. I want to talk to you about them before we get to our guest. Experience Playground's world-renowned poker experience with free food and drinks at their cash game tables, a bad beat jackpot that is over $1.1 million in climbing, weekly promotions, daily tournaments, unmatched customer service. Why play anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground. And I want to let you know that we're going to Vegas. We're going to Vegas next week. Betway, a leading global online betting and gaming brand. Follow your gut instinct. Go with Betway. Go on Betway.com or scan the QR code to join the action. Must be 18 and over and play responsibly. And, of course, the NHL draft coverage of 2024 is presented by Betway. We have 3 podcasts which will be broadcasting live from Vegas. The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro, this one here. Yours truly is one of them. The Recruits Draftcast podcast with Grant McCagg. Shane Gaumont will be in Vegas. And the Sick Podcast, The Eye Test with Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy. Jimmy will be in Vegas as well. So we look forward to that. I'm looking forward to this conversation as well because it's the first time that he joins me on the Sick Podcast in what I hope will be several times. He is the editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, Ryan Kennedy. Ryan, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much because you are in Florida right now. And if I was in Florida, right, on an afternoon, I'm not so sure I'd want to be locked up in the hotel and doing a podcast. So I really, really appreciate this because I'd probably want to be on the beach right about now. Did the thought cross your mind?
Well, when I'm done here, I got a rooftop pool with my name on it at the hotel, so I do plan on hitting that. But always happy to talk prospects. So glad to be here.
Fantastic. But we're talking prospects, but actually you're there to cover the Stanley Cup final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, or seeing as you were going to cover the prospects and the Stanley Cup final is there at the same time, and you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. Is that it?
Pretty much, yeah. There's this camp that agent Dan Milstein has put together for is mainly Russian clients. There are a couple of North American players there, but it was set for, starting this date weeks ago, and it just so happened that the Florida Panthers made it to the final, and they were the home team. So it's funny when he sent it out to folks in the press. It's like, wow, I'd love to go. I hope I'm in Florida at the time, and if I can, I'll go. And it lined up, so perfect to just get a chance to talk to a couple of the kids and see them take a bit of a skate.
Of course, the combine was a couple of weeks ago in Buffalo, but the players that were on the ice today in Florida, and some of them who were not on the ice but were there meeting with members of the media, and you met with one very high-profile prospect, Demidov, and we'll talk about him in about a minute or two. Of course, the players that were there today in Florida were not in Buffalo a couple of weeks ago.
Correct. And again, I mean, there's all the international politics with Russia right now. It's very hard to get things done from a hockey perspective, and also for NHL teams, like they can't go over there anymore. I've spoken to teams where even their European scouts, if they were living in Russia, they would tell them to lay low, or if they were from other countries, they weren't able to go in. So you've got video, but that's only really one component of scouting a player. So this gave teams an opportunity to see these kids in the flesh, talk to them. I know there was going to be off-ice workouts as well at a local gym. At the skate that I went to, I counted at least 40 people in the stands that were all working for NHL teams. Multiple GMs, multiple big names in NHL scouting. So clearly, this is something that teams were very interested in, and they attended.
All right, okay, Demidov. He's a guy that has been, everyone's been talking about this guy for quite some time now. Some believe he's the most talented, pure talent in the draft. Others will say he's in that conversation with Macklin Celebrini. Others will say that Celebrini's in tier 1 and Demidov is in tier 2, and then there's pretty much all the rest in tier 3 and tier 4. But one of the knocks you hear on him, or one of the concerns, is guy's not very big. Now, you had a chance to interview him today, so you stood side by side. How big or not is he?
Yeah, I was surprised. Like I'm about 5'11", and he's bigger than I am. I would estimate he's at least 6 foot, maybe like 6 foot and half an inch, something like that.
Is he really bigger than you, Ryan, or could it be that he had some of these heels that you put in your shoe nowadays? I don't know if you've seen those infomercials there, but probably not good for your back, but they make you look taller.
He was just wearing like running shoes, basketball shoes, whatever you want to call them. I was in my Vans, so I think we were pretty much even in terms of that. But he legit looks like he's a pretty decent size. Like I would say, he's bigger than say like a Mitch Marner, who I know some scouts have compared him to, at least stylistically. But he's got a pretty decent frame, like just all over. He's bigger than Lane Hudson. Let's put it that way.
So Demidov, in your opinion, is 6 foot.
Yeah. As an amateur, physician, whatever measurer, I would say he's probably about 6 foot. Yeah.
He suffered a knee injury down the stretch. His team won it all in the MHL, but he didn't have a chance to play the final game. He was not on the ice today skating, but he is involved in some workouts. What's the status of his knee, and how's the rehabilitation coming across?
Yeah, he didn't have any visible like he wasn't wearing a cast, he wasn't wearing a tensor bandage or anything like that. He was just in, his sort of street workout clothes, what have you. And he was slated to do some physical exercises at the sort of off ice combine, if you will. So yeah, again, I'm not a doctor, but I think this is one of those situations where they got to be careful because he was injured earlier in the season, and then as you mentioned, he got injured at the end. I heard ankle. I don't know if knee or ankle. I know it was. I feel like it was knee the first time, and again, I don't want to speculate. I just know it's kind of like some sort of lower body injury. But he wasn't moving gingerly or anything like that. So I think this is a matter of let it get 100%, and go from there. There's no reason to re-injure just for the sake of some interviews.
And pardon me, you're right. It's an ankle injury. It was an ankle ligament or something, right?
Yeah. That sounds right. Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I stand corrected. Thank you for that. All right. Okay. How is his situation similar or not to Michkov's? We know what happened with Michkov 1 year ago. We heard about a tremendous talent, but under contract in the KHL. There was some question as to, whether or not he could come over. Chances are it looked like he would be in the KHL for about 3 years. But then we started to hear a little bit of an attitude problem, this, that. It all depends on who's whispering in your ear, I guess. What can you tell us? Are there similarities?
Well, it's a bit different because with Demidov, his contract ends next season with SK St. Petersburg or SKA. So it's not as long a timeline that you would be looking at if you drafted him. You have to also keep in mind with their contracts, they end, I believe, April 30th. So hypothetically, if you draft Demidov, he could be on a plane to meet your team on May 1st. And, it's the end of the regular season, but you get in some reps. Depending on how good your team is, either you probably don't put him in a playoff lineup right away, but maybe your AHL team, if you just want to get him more experience, you toss him in for a bit of a Calder Cup run. But the sense I have is that he's got his contract, he'll play that out. After that, we'll see. North America could be a pretty quick option for him, and I haven't heard anything in terms of attitude problems. I also do think that, and it's funny, when you talk about Michkov, I remember talking to a scout last year who was saying, you know what, the attitude problem questions didn't really surface until the draft lottery happened and teams knew where they were going. So there might be a little bit of, teams hoping he'll drop to them. Because remember, we were talking about Michkov even going second overall at one point. And then, of course, you get the Russian factor. But I haven't heard anything.
Also, pardon me, it's also a good thing to use if you're not going to have the courage to draft them.
Sure.
And talking about the other situations, well, then you kind of let that leak out there. And by the way, it's probably true. He's based on what we're hearing out of Philadelphia, he's a special type to deal with. I think Danny Briere was saying that he finds it almost impossible to get a hold of him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now he's not a Dan Milstein client, so I don't have any line of communication on that one. But yeah, it might be a different situation. And obviously, he's part of the SKA organization, but they lent him to Sochi 2 years in a row. So different relationship right now.
Talk to me about Demidov. Let's go back to him. Was he disappointed that he didn't play in the KHL this season?
I got that sense. It felt like in speaking to him, that was probably a goal of his. And, as I said in my blog, he speaks very good English. And the one time that he went to his translator was to get the phrase, "It is what it is." It's like he wanted the right hockey cliche to describe what happened. So, I think he's the type of kid that
it's a nice diplomatic way of saying what happened was bullshit.
I suppose
probably,
so.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we hear is that if players in Russia don't opt to sign a 3-year deal or whatever it is, then teams can do this, right? They can send you down to the MHL, or they can bench you. they can take away your ice time and kind of use it against you until you sign on the dotted line. And then when you sign on the dotted line, then they start playing you again. And that's a concern, I think, for some NHL teams is like, okay, they want to make sure that they can kind of control the development. So they want to make sure that the player's in the right situation, in the right atmosphere. And when they're in Russia, they're worried about how the development's going to go because teams in Russia can play these games.
Certainly. And I mean, we've seen that for years now where you'll have top prospects and they'll go to the KHL, but they'll play like 2 minutes a game. And you say to yourself, like, what's even the point? You know, send the kid down to junior where he can dominate, play 20 minutes. But it does seem like they have that kind of, you know, punishment system, if you will.
Yeah.
Particularly with players where, you know, they can kind of assume they're not going to be there in 2-3 years, that they are going to go to the NHL. So it's certainly something we've seen. And again, you know, Michkov being loaned out to Sochi is probably a good example because if I'm not mistaken, Sochi was like one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
And, you know, like with Scott, they've been a marquee team for a long time now. They can draw whatever talent they want. So they have that luxury that they can kind of treat players however, unfortunately.
In conversation with Ryan Kennedy, of course, the editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, who was in Florida and had a chance to have a one-on-one with Ivan Demidov, who, of course, has been everyone's been talking about this guy. How many teams were there today? Who did you see that you recognized?
Yeah, so in terms of GMs, like Craig Conroy was there, Pat Verbeek was there, Kyle Davidson from Chicago was there. Some of the scouts I recognized were like Chris Draper from Detroit, Wes Clark from Toronto, Don Maloney was there. I saw Bill Zito afterwards, and the Panthers were practicing, so I didn't see him in the stands, but he might have his own little window there. It is their facility after all.
Ryan, this is a podcast in Montreal. Was Kent Hughes there?
I didn't see him. Doesn't mean he wasn't there, but I didn't personally see him.
All right. You didn't see Jeff Gordon either? No?
Not personally, no.
No Montreal Canadian scouts? No? Not personally?
I didn't see no black jackets with the Habs logo.
Oh, man. All right. Okay.
They've got time, though.
Yeah. So these teams, they all had a chance to interview with these players if they wanted to right there. They could do that?
Yeah. I know like Buffalo interviewed him kind of a few minutes after I did. So that was one of the big thrusts of this camp was that NHL teams could talk to these kids. And I know just from, you know, the organizing done by Dan Milstein, he was like, yeah, like there's a lot of teams that want to talk to players like Demidov. So for sure.
I think we have a picture of Demidov with Levshunov. Is that possible? Let's see.
Yeah,
there you
for
go.
Sure.
There you go. Yeah, Levshunov's a little bit bigger, obviously. You could tell on the left there, and
certainly, but he is like 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Okay. So, kind of makes sense. Kind of looks like 6 foot if you put it that way. Yeah. All right. Okay. What are the rumblings down there right now? I know the draft obviously is going to be in about 10 days from now. But what are the rumblings? What are you hearing?
Well, I think it's just really going to come down to, you know, kind of team need. The way I look at this draft is that you have all these excellent defensemen, Levshunov being one of them, but you also have Sam Dickinson, Zeev Buyam, Zane Parekh, you know, Anton Silyev, who I don't know if he's going to come to the draft or not, but a 6'7" mobile defenseman that could be the next Victor Hedman. And then you have Demidov, you have Caden Lindstrom, a big, powerful center. Like you have all these different options after Mac and Celebrini. And to me, the big question is, what does Chicago do? Do they take a Demidov that can play on Connor Bedard's wing in a year plus? Or do they want that potential number one defenseman in Levshunov, Silyev, whoever? That to me is
one of the things that has caught my attention is that there's so many mock drafts, of course, going around, is that it seems like more and more people are talking about teams drafting by need. And over the years, teams have drilled it down our throats that, you know, they draft by best player available. And for whatever reason, this year, a lot of people are talking about, well, this team has to draft by need. They need forward, like for example, Montreal needs forward, so they have to draft a forward. But if the forwards that they identify are out, you still draft the forward anyway, knowing that your next best player available could be a defenseman, or is it possible that they just don't put defensemen in the same category as forwards when they talk about best player available? Chicago, if they'd want to draft the best player available, a lot of people believe it's Demidov, right? After Celebrini. But
it depends on who you ask. And that's what I like about this draft is that, I mean, you're right. You shouldn't necessarily draft for need because the Canadians did that with Kotkaniemi and it was a disaster. But this year, like to me, after Celebrini, there's about 10 guys that could go in any order and I wouldn't be shocked. Like if Levshunov went 2, I'm totally cool with that. I get it. You know, he looks like he's almost NHL ready, two-way guy. That's awesome. If he went 7th, I'd be like, wow, you know, a team got a good player there because maybe somebody saw more potential in Silyev, or a team saw the potential in Caden Lindstrom where they're like, you know, big, strong centers, you have to draft them and you have to draft them early. So let's jump on this kid before somebody else does. If they like Sam Dickinson because they think he can play right away in the NHL, I get that too. So I think this is one of the rare occasions where you can't really go wrong in terms of if it's need, it's still close to best player available because there's so many players that are so tightly packed in there.
In talking to Demidov, do you get a feeling some of like where he would prefer to go?
In terms of an NHL team?
Yeah.
No, I think he's just super stoked to get drafted. And I mean, I know he's enjoying being in Fort Lauderdale right now, but I don't think the Panthers are going to get a sniff at him. So I think he'll just be happy, you know, with whatever organization believes in him. All
right. Okay. How about coming over to North America? Is that something that he'd like to do sooner rather than later?
I would suspect that after his contract is up, he would be pretty amenable to that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you would think that he's going to do another year. Is that what he thinks? Does he think he's going to do another year in Russia? And by that token, if teams know, if Scott knows that he's going to leave, is it possible they send him to the MHL again for another year?
Very possible. I mean, he's going to play out his contract. He doesn't really have a choice there.
That would be a waste of year of development, though, right? He would have nothing to learn another year in the MHL.
No, but I mean, I guess, you know, if you're going to look for a silver lining, you know, he only played 30 games this year in the regular season, and then he had that long playoff run. Just him, you know, getting more reps is not the worst thing in the world.
A shout out to Mekamoto, a Moto Guzzi, Piaggio, and Vespa dealer. They've been around for 100 years. JF, their owner, has been there for the last 10. And on Thursday, June 27, they're having an all-day open house. It's a great opportunity for you to pop in and do road tests all day. Mekamoto at 4398 De La Roche Street. Check out www.mekamoto.ca, and they do great tune-ups, by the way. I brought mine in for the oil change and 1,000-kilometer checkup and all that stuff, and they change the belt and everything that they need to make sure that your Vespa or your scooter is or your motorcycle is 100%. So thank you very much for that. All right, okay. Is there something that Demidov said today in your one-on-one that most piqued your curiosity, caught your attention?
Just the fact that his English was very good. You know, I mean, comparing him to most Russians who take, I would say, years, you know, to get even sort of comfortable speaking English on their own. I mean, he's way ahead of them. And then, you know, even some players that are in the NHL aren't the most verbose, where with him, like I said, the only time he went to his translator was because he wanted that beautiful hockey cliche, it is what it is. And he wanted to make sure he had it right. But otherwise, he was very comfortable. And to me, that was like, it's not common to speak English in Russia, really. So for a teenager to have a pretty good, you know, grasp of it, to me, that was pretty impressive and just sort of speaks to the drive he has to be an NHLer sooner than later.
Who are the other Russian players that were actually that were pretty popular there earlier today?
Well, like Igor Surin is a player that I spoke to. Matej Shuravin, the big defenseman. Artem Levshnov, like obviously teams saw him, but he was there as well. Timur Cole was there. Most of the big Russian names were there, with the exception of like Silyev and Artemanov. Igor Chernyshev is here, but he actually got sunburned, so he didn't skate today. But he will be there for the rest of the camp.
Grant McCagg, who's the co-host of the Recruits Draftcast podcast and of recruits.ca, he had an interesting observation about a week or two ago regarding Surin, and he said, you know what? The team that chooses Demidov would probably be wise to choose Surin. You draft a fellow countryman, and it can help with adaptation. It's logical. I get it.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Surin speaks pretty good English too. I interviewed him, and he didn't need much help from his translator either. So that's a young man that, again, like you just see the drive to put in the work, not only on the ice but off the ice, to say like, okay, I've got goals. What will help me achieve those goals?
Do you expect more forwards or more defense to go in the top 10?
I expect more defense. I think it's going to start with Celebrini. Demidov could be too. And then, Lindstrom's in there. I love Berkeley Catton, but I've been doing this long enough to know that kids that are 5'10" get walloped in the top 10. We just usually don't see them. So if Catton or Costa Helenius drop out of the top 10, it would be a shame, but I would understand. Like I would predict that. I think Tija Ginla is probably the wild card, where he could certainly go top 10. Also, I'd say Beckett Seneke from Oshawa. There are teams out there that think he might be one of the best forwards in the entire draft class. So if he goes top 10, I would say my antenna would go up on that one, where that team really believes in the growth that they've already seen from Seneke and the growth that is most likely still to come.
Cam Robinson, who's the contact director at Elite Prospects, he tweeted out earlier today that an NHL executive told him on Demidov, I'm glad I don't have to decide to pick him second, but he's that good. You drop him into the OHL and he's destroying the league. It's not his fault he was stuck in Russia or in the Russian juniors. He'll be signed and in the NHL by next spring. Wow.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I believe it. Just like watching Demidov on video this year, it's just like every shift something is happening offensively. Like he puts himself in good spots, but also he's the type of player where if his shot doesn't go in, it always seems to like rebound to a teammate, or if his shot doesn't go through, it always seems to end up on a teammate's stick. I mean, it's not something you can quantify really, but he just seems to have that magic that it's always dangerous when he's on the ice offensively. And I agree with that exec. If Demidov had played for the London Knights, he probably would have had like 130 points.
Yeah. You expecting a lot of activity next week in Vegas?
In terms of NHL trades?
Yeah.
Maybe, but last year, keep in mind, there was no trades on the first day. Like it used to be that the second trade deadline was at the draft, right? Because you had all the GMs in one place. They could walk over to each other. We didn't see that last year. And maybe it was because of the flat cap. So maybe the fact that the cap is going up will change that. But also keep in mind, this is the last draft with this format. These GMs probably aren't going to see each other next year. So I don't know if they want to go with a bang, or if it's just close to last year where they say, you know what, we don't want to miss our guy. That was something a GM told me last year at the draft. I was like, there was no trades. And he was like, well, teams didn't want to miss their guy. If they traded down, they could lose the guy they wanted. So maybe it's different this year because there's so many good players packed up tight at the top. But who knows? I mean, we did see that one trade with Chicago moving up like 2 spots.
Yeah.
I think that happened about a month ago. That was my favorite trade ever because I was joking that somehow they already know who Vegas was going to take with that pick that they skipped over. But it sounds like that might have been the first domino in another deal where Chicago needed to have a certain pick available. So I guess we'll see what happens there.
So look, the Canadians pick 5th, and I get stopped every day. People asking me, who are the Canadians going to pick? And I said, tell me who's going to go in the top 4, and I'll probably have a pretty good idea who's going to go number 5. But why don't I ask you this? With some sort of logic, because we know Celebrini is going to go out number 1 for sure. But there's a chance that Lev Shunov could be available at 5, and there's a chance that Caden Lindstrom could be available at 5, and there's a chance that Demidov could be available at 5. Who are the players that, should they be available, the Canadians, in your opinion, should pick at 5? Like, if let's do forwards. If Caden Lindstrom, Aginla, Seneca, Yzerman, they're all available, who should they pick and why?
I go Caden Lindstrom, 100% for the Habs, because I think that is their number 1 weakness, is down the middle. I think Nick Suzuki is a 1B at best. I know Habs fans will disagree with me on that, but I don't think they're going anywhere without a big prototypical number 1 center.
It's an interesting comment, Ryan, that you made, because he was top 15 in stats this year for players who played center for goals and for points.
Sure. And what did that get them? It's easy to score on a bad team.
Yeah, I know, but if Connor Bedard does that next year, you're not going to say what did it get them when Chicago's going to miss the playoffs. You're going to say he's a phenom.
Well, Connor Bedard is literally nobody to play with, where the Habs have a semblance of an NHL roster, right? I mean, they have Cole Caulfield. They have some talent. Like, Connor Bedard was playing with, like, Philip Kurashev. And Connor Bedard is
I love this, by the way, because you got solid opinions here. So
I'm very. This is my thing, man.
Wow, I
like,
love this.
Big centers.
Now the podcast got good here. Here we go.
We'll get rolling, because I know Montreal fans disagree.
Is Mika Zibanejad a number 1 center?
I think he's a 1B, and I think we saw that in the playoffs.
Okay, you think he's a 1B? Yeah. All right, okay.
Yeah. I'm like, when I think number 1 center,
tell me who you think, when you think number 1 centers.
Yeah, Barkov, McDavid, Matthews. Like Leon Draisaitl, he's a number 1 center on a team that already has a number 1 center. Nathan McKinnon, right? Like, these are the big high wattage guys that make a big difference, right? Like, even
you probably don't have more than 10 number 1 centermen in the National Hockey League based on your criteria.
Yeah, in terms of elite centers, because here's what I look at. Like, just going back to the Montreal example, like, obviously the Habs want to get back in the playoffs, right? And they got to do that in a division featuring Barkov, Matthews. Braden Point's not big, obviously. He's not a typical number 1 center, but you look at what he's been able to accomplish. He basically broke the mold. Dylan Larkin, like, these are guys that Montreal has to contest with to leapfrog over teams, right? Like, I would say, like, Ottawa is probably in the same situation where it's like Josh Norris, Tim Stützle, I think, is more of a winger. The best player on Ottawa is Brady Tkachuk, who's also a winger.
So if I take Nick Suzuki and I slot him in Tampa and I make him play with Stamkos and Kucherov, those are going to be definitely number 1 center numbers that he's going to put up. He might hit 100 points.
But I would get 50 points on that line.
I understand that, but then, you talked about Braden Point, and I mean, I could have said the same thing about Braden Point, right? I love Braden Point.
Yeah.
But, he's playing with those guys.
Yeah.
On a power play with those guys and with Hedman.
Yeah, but he's also been a driver, and when some of those guys have been out of the lineup, Braden Point stepped up. So, like I said, Braden Point's kind of atypical because he is only sort of 5'10-ish. But he has, we're at a point now where, like, Logan Stankoven, the Dallas Stars believed in him because they saw Braden Point, and they said, well, Braden Point can do it. Maybe Logan Stankoven can do it for us. And so far, so good, right? I mean, Stankoven's only like 5'8". But
Rupe Hintz a number 1 centerman in your opinion?
I think he's almost there. I would have loved to see him healthy in the playoffs, because when he was there,
Okay.
They gave Edmonton fits when he was not in the lineup.
Yeah.
Jason Robertson was dead in the water. So I would say he's like in the mix. Yeah. He's a little underrated because he's out there in Dallas. And you think of Sagan and Ben, whereas it's really that next generation.
So for me, Nick Suzuki is a number one center. But if in your category, number one centermen are Barkov, Draisaitl, McDavid, McKinnon, and Austin Matthews, Braden Point, it's less than 10 number one centermen in the National Hockey League. At that point, I can understand you saying that Suzuki's a 1B. But for me, number one centerman, for sure, there's different categories, and there's some players who are more elite. Connor McDavid is generational. Nathan McKinnon is just, anywhere between franchise and generational. He's obviously right there. For me, there's about 20 number one centermen in the National Hockey League. You probably have 10. That's why I got Suzuki in my list. Yeah,
I put him on the same plane as like Ryan Johansson. Like not current Ryan Johansson, obviously.
Well, I hope not.
Injured, but
I hope not, because current Ryan Johansson is not very good.
Yeah, let's say Ryan Johansson from like 4 years ago.
Ryan Johansson from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Suzuki's better.
Very good, but not like the guy that's going to take you to the Stanley Cup.
No, but
Hayden Lindstrom, with his size and his power and his skill and his skating ability, if he turns into what you want him to turn into in 5 years, he would be that number one center,
Yeah, but listen, Ryan Johansson at his best was back like 9 to 10 years ago when he had a 71-point season. I mean, Ryan Johansson.
All right, then I'll give you vintage Ryan Johansson.
All right, I hear you. I hear you. I think that I know you said, what is that given the Montreal Canadiens? The Montreal Canadiens have been in a rebuild. It's been much documented. They finished last in the league a couple of years ago, and fifth last in the league last year, and fifth last in the league the year before that. So last, fifth last, fifth last.
Yeah. But my point is that the stakes are a lot lower.
They haven't had a goalie in the top 15. They've been the most decimated team by injuries over the last couple of years, losing about 700 man games per season. They have a power play, which is one of the bottom 5 power plays in the National Hockey League. They lack 2 wingers on the second line, and then so they Mike Matheson's their best defenseman. I understand your point. I don't think you were alluding to this, but I don't think it's Nick Suzuki's fault where the Canadiens are where they are in the standings, right? I mean, they're
certainly not. No, what I'm saying is that, his stats are pretty good, but the stakes are very low.
Okay.
So you'd like to score 2 points and lose 5-2.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
So you'd like to see it when the team's going to be more competitive and they're going to play more competitive games. You want to see his stats at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I would like to see what the Habs would do in a 7-game series against the Florida Panthers, for example.
Well, yeah, he played pretty good in the playoffs versus Toronto a couple of years ago, and that was like 3 years ago. I'll say this, and I still probably won't change your mind, but I'll say this. Take a look at Nick Suzuki's stats of puck possession in the offensive zone. He's like one of the best players in the National Hockey League.
Yeah.
And, and he's not a big guy. He's like 5'11". He is thick. There's no doubt about it. But when you don't play on a great team and you have some of the best possession stats in the National Hockey League in the offensive zone, you got to be a pretty good player and you have to have awesome puck protection skills.
Yeah. Pretty good player for sure. Yeah. No doubt there. I'm just saying, like, a guy that's going to take you to the Stanley Cup, there's certainly been an archetype in the past few years. Vegas, big, heavy, strong. St. Louis, big, heavy, strong. Those Washington teams were big, heavy, and strong. Obviously, Florida, big, heavy, and strong. Edmonton, crazy skilled, deep down the middle. There's an archetype.
Hey, I'll end it with one more draft question, and I so appreciate your time today. It was no shortage of things to talk about. I love where you went off on Suzuki. That was great. If the Habs had to choose, if they had to choose between a Ginla or a Seneca, yeah, who would you choose and why?
Oof, you're making me choose between my children here.
You like them that much, huh?
I like them both. I would say I'll go Seneca because I'm an Ontario guy, and that kid's like, I think he's gonna be like 6'5", and he's got hands. Like, he had a major growth spurt. He might not be done growing yet. And I had some scouts tell me they think he'll be a center. Like, he's played both, but they see him as potentially a center. So
so he's almost 6'4" now, can still grow, and some scouts tell you that they think when all is said and done, he might end up being a centerman. That's interesting, because I heard some scouts say that they think when all is said and done, that Lidstrom might end up being a winger. Have you heard that?
Very possible. I haven't heard that, but it's funny because, like, Lindstrom, we were talking to him the other day, and one of the players that he likes to watch is Quentin Byfield, who obviously was a center currently playing wing as he learns the NHL game.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparable, by the way. He is, of course, Ryan Kennedy. He's the editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, and this was a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. There you have it. Marinaro, once again, special thanks to Energy Transportation Group, special thanks to Bittt Tibi, special thanks to Playground, and a shout-out to Mecha Moto as well. We are live at the Montreal Technology Show. Come on by. It started today. Well, I'm not live right now. I am live right now, but by the time you're watching this, this was recorded earlier on in the day. It's at Palais des Congrès. And all you have to do is register for free if you'd like to come on down on the 19th or the 20th of June by entering code podcast. I want to end it by letting you all know once again, for all you soccer fans who are watching, if you'd like to spend some time with me and watch an Italy game with me, come on down to Kitchen 73 in Laval. I'm going to be there to watch Italy versus Spain, Euro 2024. So it's going to be a 3 p.m. watch party. No reservations necessary, but you might want to get over there probably around 2 o'clock or 2:30 at the latest. And following the game, I'm going to bring you a live post-game show, and hopefully we'll be talking about an Italian team win. That would be nice. But, the most important part is I think we're going to have ourselves a great soccer game, and we're going to have great company. And Robert's put together an amazing spread, buffet of pizza, pasta, and fries for only $15. Buffet of pasta, pizza, and fries for only $15. Kitchen 73 in Laval this Thursday, June 20th. Game starts at 3 p.m. Drop by. Watch the Italy-Spain game with me. For Agnello and Sammy and Shane Gaumont and Jimmy, formerly from the Foulam restaurant, I'm Marinaro signing off from Palais des Congrès. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked it, share it with your friends. Comment SICK, S-I-C-K. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. It's a Sick podcast. I'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.